We're off to a good start today, folks.
We are. I've found the show notes now, so we can officially continue. The problem is, right, AI agents seemingly do everything for me these days, apart from finding me the show notes. So,
at what point do you become the agent for your AI? You're just a human agent.
Oh,
that has an
So
exponential process.
I was working on all sorts of user experience stuff around AI agents, and one of the features that I saw is there's a switch that says, instead of kind of allowing an agent to have a new identity of its own, it can borrow yours for a time. And you can kind of provision it to borrow your identity if it needs certain credentials for an amount of time. The hilarious thing here, of course, is I saw this switch completely out of context, and I was like, it could just be me.
Stop it.
I could log on 9 a.m, click the switch, and then turn it off at 5. That sounds like a good deal to me.
I don't know if an AI agent could ever replace you, Matt.
Oh, I'm sure they're coming for us all.
Well, on that note, hello and welcome back to Random But Memorable, the podcast from 1Password. This is our space on the internet where we like to offer some security advice. We interview some special guests from the cybersecurity community, and we round up the latest security trends in our Watchtower Weekly feature. I can't believe we're recording another episode already, and it's the end of March. I have no idea where time is going, but yeah, end of March.
We always talk about security events, and RSA is obviously happening right now, and I can't I swear everybody has the conversation of RSA gets earlier in the year every year. I don't think it does. I think that's just time. It just feels like it does. It'll be black hat before we blink.
Nice. All right. Well, so today on the show, you're going to learn about how supply chain attacks are becoming self-fulfilling crime economy for the cyber world. And then in Crash Course, Matt is going to break down DDoS attacks. DDoS. I don't know what DDoS. He's going to explain how to pronounce it. DDoS. All I can think about is Adidas and Adidas at this point.
So
he's going to explain.
There we go. Oh,
my
that's
goodness.
Good.
So he's going to explain how the attacks work and why they can bring even the biggest websites to a halt. And then later in the show, Jaden will be sitting down with Deviant Ollam, a physical security expert who spent years breaking into buildings, testing real-world defenses, and exposing the physical side of cybersecurity. I think this is going to be a really exciting one. Jaden, was the interview as fun as it sounds?
Yeah, it was really cool to talk to him. Felt a little bit naughty because I'm kind of asking a bloke, how do you break into places? How are we doing this? It felt like his job is towing the line of what is legal, but it is legal, but it's finding ways to do things that would be illegal. It's just such a weird sort of realm, but it was really, really cool to talk to him.
All right, let's get into some Watchtower Weekly, where we unpack the latest trends in cybersecurity and privacy. This week, we're talking about supply chain attacks. We all know that supply chain attacks help the world go round, or supply chains help the world go round. Today, we're going to explain how supply chain attacks are fueling what researchers call a self-reinforcing cybercrime economy, which already sounds a bit ominous. Traditionally, when we think of cyber attacks as pretty contained, one company gets breached, one set of data is then stolen. But what researchers are now seeing a shift is a shift away from those one-off attacks into something much bigger. So according to a recent report by the Register, cybercriminals are now linking different types of attacks together. Things like phishing, credential theft, SaaS compromise, and ransomware into what they are describing as a self-reinforcing cycle. So the key to all of this is supply chain attacks.
So when first comes to mind, we were thinking of physical goods, but it sounds like that's not what you're talking about though, Matt.
Exactly. So in cybersecurity, a supply chain attack is when attackers target a trusted third party, like a software vendor, an open source package, that happens a bunch, or a service provider in order to gain access to everyone downstream. There was one recently where, OpenClaw it was pulling from open source packages and like installing stuff on your machine, and so that's what someone managed to compromise. So yeah, instead of hacking one company, you compromise one supplier, and then suddenly you've got access to hundreds or even thousands of organizations. It's basically the difference between retail attacks and wholesale attacks.
It's kind of scary because it seems like it's all just trickled in rather than one massive frontal blow. So how do you even sort of see it, which is the confusing thing?
I think one of the things as well is with tools like Cursor and Claude Code and all of these kind of agentic development tools, and people using them that aren't, I say this based on myself, people who aren't like fully developer minded and understand all of these things that are going on, it installs stuff. Like it just will go and find a package and like, oh, you needed this thing, let me grab it from a package and install it. And I was building something recently that was just like me messing around and building like this 3D postcard thing. And I looked down and I looked at all the packages. There must have been 700-800 packages that it pulled and installed for this like postcard gimmick thing. And so like if you think about all of those, that is really where the kind of like the danger comes from in all of these. Like I just set it going. I didn't hit approve for every one of those 700 packages, right?
Well, it's like the terms and services, right? You get a new something and you're like, okay, do you approve of these terms and services? And you just click yes. Like no one reads the 17-page contract. And so now the worry is, well, you didn't read the 17-page contract, and these robots then go and do what now? But it's a very quick thing, and then once someone's compromised, then everyone gets compromised.
I was thinking the exact same thing, Sarah. It's so easy with all this hype for everyone to say, plug this tool in and download this and install this. And if you feel like you've got FOMO, I'm like, I've got to keep up. But then, Matt, as you're saying, you end up downloading extra packages. I don't know what packages I was meant to download. Who knows if that one's malicious? I'll probably still get my output, but there's these hidden things throughout my process that I wasn't aware of.
It's always terrifying to run the kind of package update, and it goes, oh, we updated these vulnerable packages. I'm like, what? Where?
Why were they vulnerable?
Yeah. And it doesn't give you any more information either. It just says, like, we updated 3 vulnerable packages. Okay, so that is really where the self-reinforcing part comes in. What the research shows is that these attacks aren't happening in isolation anymore. They're actually feeding into each other. So a compromised open source package that spreads malware, that leads to then credential theft. Those credentials unlock SaaS systems or cloud environments or databases somewhere, and then that access is then used for ransomware or extortion. And then, each stage gives attackers more data, more access, and more leverage for the next attack.
That's nuts. They're almost doing the delayed gratification approach of rather than just hit one person quickly, they're trying to hedge their bets almost.
Yeah.
It's the old Office Space movie where, you're not going to steal all the money. You're just going to steal 1 penny off of every transaction and round it up. And then
I remember that.
over time,
that actually happened though,
yeah.
Right? Do you remember, I think it was British Airways. It was actually a supply chain attack like we were talking about. So it was using something called MageCart to do their credit card payments. And there was some sort of script on the page that got added, 22 lines of code. And it took everybody's credit card who then checked out. And so what they were then able to do is just charge those cards again, like a small little fee of like a transaction fee. And if you saw it, you'd be like, oh, BA, and then another BA payment and everything like that. They got a £183 million fine in 2019. So
That hurts.
by the Information Commissioner's offices in the UK.
Oh, there you go.
That's pretty substantial.
I guess it's the death by 1,000 paper cuts kind of methodology, right? You don't realize one, but you realize a lot. That's nuts.
That I think is the same paper cut over and over again, somehow making you a millionaire. But yeah.
But it's interesting then because it seems like it's just a continuous chain reaction then, or even a loop. Because once an attacker has succeeded, they're not just cashing out, they're reinvesting. I guess it's the compound interest, I guess you could say. It just keeps on giving. And then that access gets sold to other criminals, and then tools will get improved and campaigns get scaled. So it's kind of like after a successful attack, it actually makes the next one cheaper, faster, and more effective. Kind of makes me start to think about the cookies when I'm getting targeted ads to me as well, which is an interesting position to look at it. But do you think organizations are aware of this kind of problem?
Like it's less prominent on companies because every company uses a bunch of like open source material, like supply chain of using packages or services. And I think like as a consumer, because it is always hidden away in terms and conditions and like, all of the privacy policies that like we have 5,000 partners. Like I don't think that there is an acceptance on the consumer side of what constitutes like reasonable amounts of third party risk.
I think there's the element of not wanting to say it either. Like, no one wants to be the one that says, okay, well, we were breached by this or we were breached by that. But then it's well, what do you do? How many duplications of services do you end up with? Like, how do you mitigate for what if could happen by not spending $1 gajillion on stuff? It's kind of like if you're a retailer and the power goes out. If the power goes out, your store has to close because you don't have a backup generator to run all of the things. Because even if you did have a backup generator to run the cash tills, the internet service providers that you're using to use the cash tills aren't available. Like it's a really fast domino. And I think that just creates a lot of issues, and then businesses are kind of stuck wondering, like, how do I handle this? Like there's just not a really good answer. So it's one of those where it's, kind of ostrich mode, just stick your head in the sand and hope it goes away.
So I think the key tension here is a lot of security models are still very much built around protecting your environment, and these supply chain attacks definitely don't respect those boundaries. And researchers are saying that cybercrime has really shifted from isolated breaches to ecosystem-wide compromise, where trust and relationships between vendors, tools, and platforms really become the entry point.
Yeah, I feel like we're already seeing a fair number of real-world impact stories from this. Like there's plenty of times where we read about a single compromise, like a malicious software update that turns around and ripples across number of industries, and in some cases then shutting down production or affecting supply chains in the real world.
It's scary because of the Internet of Things, with everything being so connected. If you just have slight exploitations in certain areas of your own supply chain in your house, I'm just thinking of my own house. And there are so many things that I have that I continuously update. I've got speakers connected to, minis, and I've got like automatic doors and all kinds of things. And if I'm updating packages and I'm giving them all these permissions, kind of go back to the agent conversation we had at the start. And if you've got open source environments, all it takes is that one slight issue to completely infect me. And I might not even be the target. I might be just a vector to a bigger target.
I think about the opposite is also true, that like you have all of these things in your house that probably haven't been updated since the moment that you bought them, but the rest of the infrastructure and the software and all of those types of things around that thing like do get updated and do evolve and all that kind of thing. Like I think it's why like when anybody asks me security advice, the two things that I tell them is honestly like, one, update everything as soon as it's able to be updated, and two, like use a password manager. But like most people who talk to me already use a password manager, so like update your stuff. If you buy something and don't think that you can keep it updated, switch it off. And I think like the reason why that kind of rings true around supply chains is if you think about it, like the moment that you bring a package in or you bring something that requires an external, you then kind of inherit that risk from that thing. And the amount that we think about that when buying internet connected things and like that type of thing is probably the same amount as someone in like a non-software business who is using some of these packages or using some of these elements that like is a third party software. And I think just because you can secure your own systems really well, it doesn't really mean anything, because if you can't trust something that's upstream then gets compromised, you essentially inherit that risk. So I think the conversation is starting to shift towards things like, securing identities and access and not just kind of whole networks, and thinking about vendor risk more seriously. And also like treating trust as something that needs to be continually verified and not just like once and we're done. So like when all of these packages change and when the vendors change and, when your partner gets a new 5,001 other partners, like you kind of assess that before you take things on. But it really is a lot to consider every time you look at these things. And it does always make me think every time I get that email that's just like, we have an update to our partners. And it's never like 12. It's never like we have 12 partners. We know who they are. It's Greg from down the road. He's the butcher. It's the person who designs the packaging for the meat from the butcher. Like, it's never a normal supply chain. It's always like, we have 5,036 like different advert platforms that analyze every single move. And, they care about their security just as much as we care about using them,
My mind goes to the scene in The Office where Michael Scott's talking about the pyramid scheme and Jim comes in and says, if we just sell to 2 more people and then they just get 2 more people involved, I'm like, okay, supply chain seems very similar. The approach, it expands.
I think that's kind of the main takeaway here. I think with everything getting more and more connected, if these attackers are starting to think in ecosystems, like instead of thinking about getting at one particular spot, but more integrating themselves with the web of how do we integrate with all of that, I think that's where then the defenders need to start thinking about that and starting to sort of make it a bigger collective habit. I think working together is probably going to be the key so that, we're all trying to help when something happens and we're all trying to figure out all of this information. We'll share the article by the Register and some more links in our show notes if you'd like to learn more. But with that, I think it's time to jump over to Crash Course. So Matt, take it away.
I don't know whether we have a jingle for this, actually. Do we have a jingle? We don't have a Crash Course jingle, I don't think.
Do learn about DDoS, DDoS,
there we go.
DDoS, DDoS.
Love that.
Ta-da!
Replay
Take
that
it away,
every
Matt.
time.
Yeah, let's soundbite that, can we? That should be a new ringtone.
Okay. Thank
Take
you
my
for that.
job, AI. I dare you.
No one can replicate that.
I am going to take you through a type of cyber assault called a DDoS attack, or a distributed denial of service attack. So, during this type of attack, a website or an online service is flooded with requests while real users then cannot connect, denying access to the site or service, which is obviously not ideal. To better understand this, we can start by thinking about when this happens unintentionally. You might have experienced this, or you've gone to buy concert tickets. Concert tickets are always the ones that everybody uses as an example. Why they don't think that people can, like, that you've got an arena and you have that many tickets, therefore you need to at least let that many people onto your site. People who run venue sites don't seem to understand what load balancers are either. But anyway, let's not get into that. It seems like every other person on the planet then wants to buy that ticket too. I'm going to bet money that all of us on the recording have at least stumbled into one of these things.
Yeah, which you can see that it's starting to become more prevalent because now instead of having to refresh at 8 a.m. in the morning every time, often it's preceding event of you've got to get to the queue to be on the early sales. Without even infrastructure, they're starting to throttle how do you even get to the landing page beforehand. Yeah, tickets are definitely the most prominent exposure in my life of something like that.
Yes. When too many requests hit a website at once, its infrastructure gets overwhelmed and the site might not load properly. Most of us have experienced this type of issue, but you might not realize that this pattern can actually be applied intentionally as well, as a way to target a company's reputation or infrastructure, which is what makes it then a DDoS attack. Do any of you, other of you, have any ideas about how this works?
I have a guess that it's a lot easier in safety in numbers, and I shouldn't say safety because DDoS is not safety, but to spread your load out wide and then everyone funnel in at once. So instead of just having my computer try to do it, I'll try to get multiple computers to try to do it. And if I'm trying to cram everyone in the door at once, I'm deliberately blocking the door. But it's a very watered down version of what I assume it is.
See, I have to assume it's robots. Evil robots. All of the neighborhood Roombas at once get a message, and they all go outside, and all of the neighborhood Roombas go outside and are on the street blocking traffic. Some sort of robot attack.
Have you seen the room full of Roombas and the children with confetti? They
No.
like pull confetti poppers, and then like if Roombas had an expression on their face, it would definitely be, oh god.
Not again.
I'm going the other way, where there was a guy that tried to get access to his own vacuum robot and control it with like a game controller, but he accidentally got access to 11,000 of them, I think the number was. So he got access to everybody's, and in theory, he can map everyone's house. It was an accident before he notified the organization and said, hey, I've accidentally got access to this, but that's another topic we could dive down into another time.
I was going to say, this sounds like your interview bleeding in. How do we
A little bit.
How do we skid into someone's house? We'll start with the robot vacuum.
Clean their floors first and then get in.
Botnets and DDoS attacks. So it actually relies on a huge number of hijacked devices, kind of what you were saying, and doing this is called a botnet. So it could be thousands or even millions of devices, and all that make a coordinated set of requests directed at the same target. A botnet is typically created when an attacker installs malware on devices, enabling them to orchestrate the attack. So sometimes the attack is for financial gain, like extorting the target. It could also be a form of activism or hacktivism if the attackers disapprove of the target in some way. Or it could be just for fun, if you can call it that. Sometimes it's just for the challenge of taking a site down.
I'm pretty sure from the target's perspective, DDoS is not going to be fun. And I would assume it's going to be pretty darn stressful.
100%. So since these requests are coming from regular devices, it can be actually really hard to tell at the first influx of traffic it's even an attack. So the target company will typically notice that there's something suspicious about their web traffic or load times and hopefully respond quickly. Some of the services out there have nailed this ridiculously well, and like, you know, all load balancers and kind of analysis of traffic and everything. It's an art form, I think, defending yourself against these. And once the attack has been identified, the company can thankfully take action to resolve it. They'll typically contact their cloud or internet service provider to rate limit requests for each IP address, or even block suspicious IPs. These both help with the number of requests coming in.
It's funny you say that, because I had a real life experience where I was almost part of one, where back in the day, if you like bootleg some applications to stream services for free, which is not recommended, if you're doing anything for free, you are paying with your data. And then my IP address was attempting to ping somewhere overseas, and they were leveraging my Internet of Things to act as a vector to access other things. So it's weird when you're a part of one too. My machines were the part of that mass approach, but I think that's where companies can then take plans as well to avoid being targeted themselves again and again and again. So I imagine this kind of includes steps that most busy websites need to consider anyway. And since influxes in traffic can be an issue when it's from your regular users, I know that, just an example, companies might use firewalls to filter suspicious traffic or load balancers, which then distribute web traffic across multiple servers when demand increases. And there are even DDoS mitigation services to help delegate this kind of work. If you need additional help, you can kind of search them, and then, you know, classic search engine optimization, there's tons of them as well. So the industry's quite big.
Nice. And the upside here is that a DDoS attack isn't a threat to the end user. As inconvenient as it may be, but if you try to visit a website that won't load, remember to send some positive energy towards their IT team is probably struggling to get it back online. And I also know a lot of these attacks are because when a system is down and then you bring it back online, sometimes all of the security checks and kind of things that need to be brought back online in order to bring them online in the right process, in the right ways, and like in order to make it completely secure again, those you know, sometimes these DDoS attacks are kind of like to try and wedge something inside the door to make it part of a wider attack. So yeah,
it's It's definitely the thankless job behind the scenes when IT teams get, pinged at 2 or 3 in the morning and they've got to get up and get these kind of things fixed. So next time you're sitting there refreshing the page to your concert provider and the websites are down, just think about the poor team on the other end trying to let more people in the door safely. But Matt, I'm glad you talked about wedging things in, because that's a great segue to what this next guest that I spoke to kind of does sometimes, depending on where he is. Deviant Ollam. He's a physical security pen tester. Really badass job. Basically gets to break into places on purpose. And an all-round really nice guy. We got him while he was on the road as well, so he was kind enough to give us some time to have a chat. Had a blast talking to him to hear about some wild stories. There's one in particular I love where he kind of references himself as the bicycle guy, and you'll find out in a moment. But he also shared some creative ways to go about bypassing doors and other physical systems. Speaking of wedging things in there before it closes. So let's dive straight into it. Stopping by for a chat today is Deviant Ollam. Deviant is a cybersecurity researcher, educator, and physical security specialist, best known for his expertise in lockpicking and penetration testing. You might recognize him from his popular YouTube channel where he breaks down physical security failures and hands-off attack methods for wide audiences. A regular speaker at DEF CON and Black Hat, he focuses on the human and hardware side of security, making him the perfect guest to unpack the risks of facing modern data centers. Thanks for joining us today, mate.
Thank you, and big apologies to anyone who recognizes me from my YouTube channel, because my production values are not like yours. It's quite the hodgepodge of brain droppings that I have over the years in this industry.
No, you know what? I actually appreciate it because it actually makes it a bit more authentic, I think. Sometimes when you put too much of a, buffer between the audience, it doesn't feel as genuine. I actually just got off the back of watching your white light switches that don't have dimmers in hallways. Go figure. Like, I'm learning more every day about building codes. Never thought I would have got exposed to that kind of stuff, mate.
Yeah, it's fun.
So you've built this career around physical pen testing and exposing real-world access control failures. So how on earth does someone even get into that kind of work?
I mean, the soundbite kind of answer that I've given over the years, which is not dishonest, is some of the right friends, some of the wrong friends, right? Someone of my age, which is getting up there nowadays, we got to grow up in an era when kids could do some foolish stuff and not pay for it the rest of their lives. And I miss that, frankly. I don't know what's going to happen to teenagers today, where one silly exploration of an abandoned building could follow them with a criminal record. But those of us who wanted to explore hidden places and, do a lot of urban looking around and snooping around, as long as we didn't fall off a rickety stairwell, we came home and we were just fine. But it sparks that idea of like, well, how do I get on that roof? How do I get into these tunnels? I want, people and my friends, the MIT crowd. I mean, this was a whole college campus of people. I didn't go there. I dated someone from MIT, but they would spend every evening at MIT campuses. There's books about how all the students would be in the steam tunnels and going through industrial spaces, and that kind of mindset that a lot of engineers and tech-minded people have of, well, I want to see how this system works. I want to see what's behind that locked door. I want to see how does this scaffolding get this hydraulic fluid over that way? I want to see the pumps. I want to see it run. That's how I grew up. And when you have some of the wrong friends teaching you that when you're young, and then you get some of the right friends when you're older saying, hey, what if you didn't do things that were illegal? What if you turned it into a career? That's been an absolute treasure that I was able to experience that shift. And a lot of credit, honestly, goes to my friend Jeff. He's known as Dark Tangent online. He, created a conference called DEF CON and a conference called Black Hat. And I've known Jeff for decades. And one year, this is way back in the day, Black Hat was still the Caesars back then. He was sitting around. He's like, man, you do that lockpicking stuff. You've done it at DEF CON for years and you teach people. You should do a training at Black Hat. I was like, no one's going to pay Black Hat prices to listen to me talk about lockpicking. What are you, crazy? He's like, no, do it. People will come. I'll make sure of it. And yeah, we ran a training at Black Hat, and oh God, like so many students come, and this is no shade at Black Hat or the students. So many students will come, learn amazing skills for multiple days, paying top dollar. And the end of class, they'll say, do you have a business card? We'd love to hire you to do this thing. And you're like, you just learned how to do it. Don't you want to? And a lot of people in the security world know this is true. They'll say, yeah, if I report these findings to my office, they won't take me seriously because I'm internal. I need an external validation of the stuff we already know because we learned it from you. But if you could come and do that and write a report about it, that'll help us out. And yeah, Bhavik Javadi and I, he's my co-founder of a lot of things. We've worked together for years at nonprofit spaces and in our companies. It's so rewarding to be able to tell somebody something that they already kind of like, I think I know that's something wrong. You say, you're right. Here's exactly how wrong it is. Here's some mitigation strategies. Here's what might be in budget, what might not be in budget. But at the end of the day, I'm still a guy breaking into places. Now I just do it for pay.
That's awesome. And you're so true about when we're younger, we get to kind of get into things that we shouldn't. And I feel there's less of that, but I definitely have some scars on my body from times that I've done things that I probably shouldn't say out loud. I'm sure you're in the same boat where they make for great stories. I'm a big advocate. And I think the thing that most people also think of when they think cyber security, the word cyber throws a lot of people off, and they think that it's always software vulnerabilities and, hacking with the DOS system and terminal codes, all of that kind of stuff you see in the movies. But a lot of your work focuses on the physical world, I guess you could say, elevators, doors, badge readers, physical infrastructure, things you can touch and feel. Can you help us understand a little bit about the physical side of cybersecurity and why it matters just as much as the digital side?
Sure. Now, I understand that not only is cyber a hot topic and has been for a very long time, your attack surface seems to be a lot more porous. You say every time we buy a new box or a new service or a new thing, that's more potential ingress for attackers. Whereas your building, you got 4 walls and they got doors. And if you say, all right, we've secured those, we think we have a handle on it. Cybersecurity is more nebulous, and your attacker profile is more broad with the cyber realm. Because if somebody's breaking into your physical building, they're in your neighborhood. They either live there or they came there. But if someone is a cyber risk, that could be a person across the globe. So your attacker is anybody. So because of that, people think of physical security as A, this thing that we've got kind of a handle on that. And B, they think of it as you point out, disconnected from the cyber side. Well, that's PhysSec's team. And that's a big thing we run into. The PhysSec team often doesn't speak to the IT team because they're very different domains. But anybody in IT can tell you if somebody can go hands-on with your infrastructure, they can either cause mayhem or they can put an implant in there, they can change settings, they can steal the actual drives and steal your data. So if somebody can breach the physical security, that often is game over for cybersecurity. I mean, they are inside the firewall, they're inside the perimeter, they can drop to single user mode if they want to on certain boxes. That's the end of everything.
It's funny saying that. We often say internally here at 1Password, security starts with the person, and it sounds like it's the same thing with you. It's the physical action someone can take to get that. And it's interesting you say they're siloed in their comparison. They don't talk to each other. Do you find that's very common across your experience?
It often is. And it's not that any one person is doing anything wrong. It's much like you might say if a data center runs on a lot of cooling. So like the plumbing and the pipes is keeping the data center running, right? But you wouldn't think that the IT team is having regular meetings with the plumbers.
Yeah.
Because they're just, your skill set's so different than mine. And as long as the water's coming out of the wall, that's all I need to know. I don't need to know how it works, or I assume you got that covered. A lot of people treat physical the same way. They say, as long as my badge boops and the door turns green and the person down the street can't get into my building because it's not their building, I don't need to know how it works. And it's probably fine. You're testing that, right? Or you did something? Are you certified? I don't know how you did this. Who do we hire? There's only so much time in the day. We can't think about a lot of stuff in our heads. It's why we trust testing and inspection. You go to a restaurant, as long as they have the little certificate on the wall that says the health inspector says it's good, you're like, I got to get back to work. Can I just order my sandwich? I don't need to see the kitchen.
It's a good point. And you've also just addressed a lot of things that I wouldn't typically think about. And now I'm going to be thinking about all those health inspection codes when I walk in. I'm going to be over-observing. But about those things, the plumbing, as you mentioned, like the coolant, stuff that would typically go over the regular individual's head as they walk into certain facilities, what about some of the obvious things that you look at, the first things that you look at when you walk into? What are I guess you could say the standards that you would go through before you start going to the extra level?
Oh, yeah. A big one would be lumped into a category that we might just call door fitment or door hardware. So this gets into the realm of what you're already great. You're scratching the real surface of where these problems develop when different domains meet. And here's a great example. I just sort of alluded to this. Nowadays, when we go into a building, typically a commercial space, you're not usually fumbling with a mechanical key anymore, right? You've got your boopy card, as my friend Straith calls them. You've got your RFID, your badge, some sort of badge system, electronic access control. Well, is that an IT kind of domain? Is that a physical domain? Like, you usually have building constructors who come in and they follow a plan, and those plans involve putting up walls and doors, and they hang the doors, and the fitment is right, and the door hardware latches the door. And then some company takes possession of the building. And typically at that point in the construction, it's got mechanical locks everywhere. The assumption is your institutional PhysSec team will upgrade those to your needs. So they work with an integrator who comes along and says, well, we're going to put card readers and electronic locks on all your doors, because obviously that's what buildings use nowadays. Well, those doors that were installed perfectly fit with the mechanical only hardware, now you got somebody else coming along and unbolting that and putting on an electronic strike. These surfaces of electronic and physical are meeting and might not match up perfectly well. Has anybody been in a building where when the AC system, the HVAC is running, the doors behave differently? Because you have a phenomenon called wind stacking. We have modern buildings are so tightly sealed for environmental heating and cooling, which is a good thing, save energy, but it makes the doors perform differently when the air is blowing. And we've actually seen doors which don't shut properly depending on whether the air conditioning is running or not in a building.
That's crazy. It's the things that you don't often think about that have that larger impact. To not to incite or to suggest for people they should go and do this, but if you yourself were tasked with breaking into a modern data center, where would you start as of today?
I like that you pointed out that security at the end of the day is people, and much like any kind of automation, any kind of systems that are technology based, they should exist to serve the needs of people and to help people. So you could have a simple example, you could have the best locks in the world, but if somebody doesn't turn the key and lock the door, it comes down to the person. You could have the best IT systems, but if somebody isn't, locking their screen or something like that, that's being undermined. Now we can get into how human interface design, maybe it's really frustrating to lock the door. It takes 8 steps. That's why no one does it. How many of us know of password policies and other things, which again, you're solving for, like password complexity requirements where, it's too complex. It was too hard for the user. And that friction causes people to not want to use the system the way they should. But if you are assessing a property, any kind of target facility, again, it all comes back to people. I'm interested in what, I'm putting eyes on target remotely or driving by, or nowadays, we'll use drones or even just satellite view to get a lay of the land. But all right, they have fences here, they have perimeters here, they have this. You're putting long range optics. You're all right, I can see they've got spotter RF on this side of the field. They've got cameras here. They've got a door. It looks like a car. But all that hardware, that is secondary to me saying, when do the people come and go? Is it occupied at all hours or not all hours? Does it look like it's all one unified, cohesive staff that's all knows each other? Or do they have contractors and visitors coming on site all the time? Do they have caterers bringing in food? Do they have deliveries? And what's their metric and processes for handling that? That's the first thing I do, is get to know the patterns of just people and their movements and their interactions at a premises. That starts to tell me what is or is not likely to be a successful path of illicit entry.
It's funny you say pattern, because that's where my mind was going in the old stakeout. You sit down with your donuts and your coffee and your binoculars, and you're looking for the patterns of the people. And self-entitled album, our podcast, Random But Memorable, in password management or security, randomizing things makes it more difficult to pick up on a pattern. Do you find because people are behaviorally in patterns and habits, it does make it easier to exploit them?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. If a facility doesn't have anybody on premises at night, somebody maybe will say, you must break in at night a lot. Sometimes if we know that this place is dead, there's no one there, sure, maybe I'll break in at night. But if there's 2 people there at night, even if they're just walking perimeter, and all of a sudden there's a car in the parking lot, or I've got the lights on in the building, I'm going to stick out like a sore thumb. There's loads of jobs we've done where the break-in is, 2 p.m. in the afternoon on a Thursday, because that's when the building has everyone in it, and you just sort of blend in with the noise.
Hidden in plain sight, as they say, I guess you could say. So we touched on plumbers in the back, actually, in the cooling, which looks at supply chain and the bigger picture of things, not just what you're doing in there. And we've seen around the world with Suez Canal getting backed up, supply chain, it can really backlog things. I guess the question is then, how does supply chain exposure factor into physical security?
Excellent questions there, right? So there's 2 ways to answer that or speak to that. One, simply, as you mentioned, the Suez Canal, like availability. The idea of whether it's an industrial kind of supply disaster or whether it's tariffs or something, that we live in a just-in-time fulfillment world. The other side, though, the sexier answer that people love to talk about if they work with the right folk who this is a real concern, is like, poisoning the supply chain, where if you are a high value target and you're ordering equipment overseas, especially from places that don't have the same protections, that might have, maybe foreign governments are interested in, oh, this router and this network switch is going to what customer? Pull that one off that shelf and ship it to them. And, that's a thing that really does happen, which is why a number of people, we work with a lot of government clients as well. You either have things that have to be manufactured by, like, you control the whole supply chain and you know your customer and you know your supplier, or you're ordering through third parties. You're playing this shell game. And a lot of corporate America does that. A lot of corporate America says we really can't let them know that we are. I mean, you pick the name of a big high value, any of the FANG companies, right? Huge companies, but for their sensitive work, they're ordering through subsidiaries and other parties because they don't want anybody in the supply chain to know, oh, this is going into an Amazon data center. This is going to be right on Jeff Bezos's desk. They don't want anyone to know that kind of thing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Supply chain attacks in the digital world are common and a big thing, but it's funny when you break it down to the physical things. It's when next time I order an Amazon package to my house, I'm going to think, how many people did it change hands with? But then for security, how many people does it need to change hands with and move for it? Which kind of leads me to my next question. I think you might have a bit of a bias here, but if we were to stack up physical break-ins and then someone get access remotely, digitally, would you think is easier or more likely to happen?
I think raw numbers, just purely by the numbers, which is per capita isn't the right way to sometimes do this metric, but digital is it. Like, there's just, again, it goes back to your attacker doesn't have to be next to you. Your attacker could be on the other side of the world. They could be in Eastern Europe somewhere, paid by professionals, or they could be someone in your own town who's just an amateur and just poking, oh, what does this IP address do? So, and the risk is so much lower. You're not worried about getting arrested or shot as a digital attacker the way you are if you're a criminal physically breaking into a building. That being said, there's something very visceral about having a physical break-in. So if a board meeting happens and somebody has to stand up and say, hey, we got to alert the customers, and the employees, there was a cyber incident, we had a small business email compromise, like, that's just become so routine in our world. And I'm not hand waving it away, it's a real risk, but it doesn't hit people emotionally the same way. Versus if you had an executive team say, hey, before you guys clock in, we got to let you know, last night somebody did break in at the back door. There's some detectives back there now taking some pictures. They were in the building for a couple hours. People feel like, ugh. Yeah. They were touching my stuff. They took a picture of my kids off the desk. I don't know. It's so emotionally resonant with people, the idea of physical harm. And that can be informing our preparedness, or it can be informing how it hits us as a response. Because remember, for all of security is a cost center. So any business out there, whether you're making pizzas or making medical treatment available to the public, your job is doing that. Your job is not, as a business, have the best doors and locks and password policies. Those things support the business, but if that costs you more money, that's less money that you have putting on pepperoni or putting on cancer treatment, right? So security is a cost center. And at the end of the day, a friend of mine, Chris Nickerson, he says, remember, every executive anywhere in the world, when you talk about security and you say, well, there's a risk of this thing, and they say, okay, how's that risk going to cost me money or make me look bad?
Yeah.
And if you can't elaborate those points, why am I securing it? Or again, my business partner, Bobak, will tell you, someone might say, hey, our access control system at this building is really outdated. We really should upgrade it. The cards are clonable. And they say, okay, what's that going to cost? And we say, well, we got a pretty big corporate campus. Our enterprise, we have this many. To put access control on a single door, you got a mechanical door, right? But you say, I want a card reader on that door. $5,000-$6,000 is your starting point for the wiring, the install, everything, right? So if you have how many doors in your building, somebody somewhere says, all right, well, this is going to cost us $1 million to upgrade our card readers, to change out all of our badges, new back end, going to make us robust as we can be against all the best attacks. That company might say, okay, so what happens if we have a break-in? And they say, well, they might steal some stuff, some inventory. Maybe you're the pizza parlor. You're a national pizza chain. And they're like, well, I mean, they're probably just going to try to steal some ingredients or maybe some cash. Is that damage going to be less than $1 million?
Yeah.
What if we spend $1 million on a Super Bowl ad and we become the best pizza chain in America and we make way more than $1 million in return? Well, maybe that money shouldn't be invested in the card readers. Maybe we should just, because the business we're in is making pizza. So that's the thing. Putting money into security, you have to justify it. And the idea of a physical risk seems so distant to people. The real reason is it going to cost me money or make me look bad? The visceral, oh my God, someone broke in, that's the thing that people have to keep in mind. That's why when I talk about like door fitment and slipping of latches, really dumb stuff, it's not the nation state attacker. That's the nightmare scenario. The nightmare scenario is the angry ex-employee. If that person can watch some Yahoo on YouTube, and I speak as a Yahoo on YouTube, and then be like, I'm going to learn how to break into the building and go swinging a baseball bat in the middle of the workday. That is the real risk. And then the executives are going to say, well, how did they did what? They broke in with like a key that anybody can buy on eBay and they took over our elevator system, or they used this little slipping latch and they popped the door open. My thing is, let's fix all that. The most you should really worry about is the sort of dedicated, distressed individual with an axe to grind who can learn dumb, low-level attacks on the internet. If you prevent that, you've prevented so much of your trouble. And the same is true of cyber, right? And the cyber side, if you're preventing the script kiddies from getting in, if you have a password policy that's just good enough that someone can't run a dictionary attack and break in, you've done your due diligence as a firm in a big way. To the fact that if you don't do that, so I was like, how did they break in? Well, our password was 8 characters long and had no capital letters, and it was just, word in the dictionary. Explaining that to your shareholders is bad.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's the digital equivalent of that translated to the real world is we just didn't have a very good lock on the door. You could pull the door hard enough and it would open.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we kind of touched on it too, and it kind of already answers this next question I want to ask you about the softer targets. What are the softer targets? And it sounds like by raising the tide, this all ships, as they say, cover the base, cover the key things that look like easy exploitations for those grunt people with the baseball bats. What are those softer targets, like a top 3 that you think these are things you should be just doing straight away that are typically easier to reach? So
I'll give you kind of 3 in different. Here you go. So in purely mechanical, like doors and latches, right? Latch slipping, right? If I can slip the latch, or if I can pop the door just by using an underdoor tool or something. These are all so many people who know anything about physical security. They know the tools I'm talking about, the traveler hooks and such. But if you can just slip, again, these are dumb, what I'll call internet knowledge attacks, where somebody who goes on like Google, which their browser history gets subpoenaed if they're a criminal, and then they literally are searching for, how do I slip the latch on this door? You will find answers that show you how to bypass a door. You can shore those surfaces up with certain types of cover plates, or just using the proper hardware and installing the door so it mates up correctly and the latches aren't actually slippable. Basic internet stuff for mechanics. On the card reader and access control side, well, there's kind of 2 surfaces there. There's the card, there's at the door, where you say, are you using clonable credentials from the 90s, which loads of buildings are. The number one, and I'm not calling out HID Corp or anybody in particular here, but the number one access control credential to this day in 2026 is HID Prox. HID's Prox card was the OG touch card technology. It's the oldest one on the market. It's still the main one in the marketplace right now. Still getting installed, brand new installs, because people want to keep up with their existing compatibility. They don't want to upgrade the first 3 buildings in their campus. So the 4th building goes up. Well, let's buy more of that Prox stuff. That's pretty rough. Or things like, again, I'll talk about gassing a REX sensor, blasting air through a door, and it causes the electronic sensor on the inside of the door to unlock the door. Things like that. We still see that all the time. So low-level dumb attacks. If I can clone your cards with a flipper or a $20 off-the-rack Alibaba card cloner because your card technology is decades old, That's a hard one to shore up. Not quite as hard as the third surface on the back end, where the actual communication from reader to panel is the wiring through the walls. Most systems are using a very outdated technology. I won't get way into the weeds, but it's called WeGand. And like we make and install a sniffer. Like if you take a card reader off the wall, I can install it and put it back on the wall. And then I can just grab all of your badge data that everyone is badging in and out of the building. And I can come back and I can replay it, or I can dump the data. I can upgrade my badge.
It kind of answers it's almost like you've done these interviews before, mate. You've answered my next question of like cutting corners, because it sounds like going back to the costs and how much it is and looking at margins of, well, is that going to cost off the top of my top line, my P&L? I have to invest in this and it's not going to make me money. Are you concerned about companies taking those security shortcuts to build new, like whether it's a data center or a physical infrastructure somewhere else? Are you concerned about that kind of thing?
I am concerned about it, and that's that one depends on the client. So upgrading existing structures is hard, because you say, well, it's already here, it's already working. Do we really have to come up with more money? And that gets into our pizza shop, hospital, where do you spend the $1 million question? That's a real question for business minds. Again, security should never get in the way of business. And that can even that can translate down to what's called the transaction time at the door. If you have this brand new Whamodyne Supreme credential that just rolled out, and it's got challenge response crypto, and no one will ever clone your badge ever again, and we're going to throw out that old Prox card, forget that nonsense, use the new, super credential. And then you watch everyone coming in, and it's not just the front door, because nowadays everywhere in the office is compartmentalized, the research division and the security server room and the security, all these doors. If the transaction time used to be instant, like near instant, boop, and now it's, wait, you gotta get closer and you gotta hold it up. Now it's green. Okay, good. That 1 to 2 seconds stretched out across all these people stacking up at each other at all the choke points. Everyone hates that. You're going to wind up with people propping doors, holding doors open for other people. Why? Because the transaction time stinks.
It's funny how it really only takes a couple of extra seconds, but those seconds compound, and habitually people will start to predict that those extra seconds will take longer time just to cut corners, which is...
Yeah. Introducing friction means people, again, it's all back to people. The people won't use it the way you thought it was going to work when you engineered it, if it's annoying to use.
100%. That's, I guess, why betas exist, and large groups of people then try to recall things and make it a little bit more fast. So we looked at the key things you look at, and straight away, as you said, kind of like the 3 key that needs to be improved. What about when it comes to what companies are doing right, protecting high value infrastructure? What are companies doing that you're saying this is the way of the future, where we're going? It's a great idea to do these things. And then what roles do like red teams play in that?
Yeah. So not to sound self-serving, but one of the things some companies are doing right is testing at all. Bringing in other voices. And this is just like if you have a very important proposal that you're writing up, you don't just write it and read it yourself, and you're going to read your own typo 3 times and not notice it because you wrote it. Give it the fresh set of eyes will catch things. So bringing other people in to do testing is, in my opinion, a good thing. Also, trying to say, well, we've always done it that way, so it's fun. Trying to say, is that the right course of action? I don't know. The we've always done it that way and it seems to be working mentality, getting away from that is kind of important. And there are firms out there that say, yeah, we've always done this, but what do you think? And again, this is it's not even us breaking in. This is just in a boardroom. We're sitting down with them saying, all right, I can see, that's a very popular way of doing that. But have you ever considered using this system or trying it this way? Because it'll save you all this effort and trouble. And this technology is mature enough and ready to go now. There was, again, my phone, right? People were really hot for mobile credentials. We don't want badges. We want mobile credentials all now. There was a time when everyone was trying to jump on that because everyone wanted their new smartphone to do everything. And mobile credentials were not ready for the prom. They're getting there. They're getting there. But again, every solution is different. So talking to an outside expert first, just like they say, if you're going to, it's the new year, new me, I'm going to join a new journey of health. Well, before you start lifting weights or running, talk to your doctor. Right?
It sounds like there's also a healthy level of paranoia sometimes.
Yeah. Just because nothing has ever, we've never had a break-in. Sure.
Now,
No,
yeah.
no one's ever had a break-in until they have one. Like,
Yeah.
sure, like everything. As again, you'll think all I do is quote my buddy Bobbick all day long. But he used long ago when he was a young man, he worked for Best Buy, right? He worked in the computer repair division, and you'd
Yeah.
have a customer bring a machine in 7 years old, and you say, "Yeah, well, this computer, like the hard drive died. Like this computer shot. We can show you some new ones." On what? This computer worked fine for 7 years. Yeah, everything works until it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's like you wouldn't say that about a light bulb. This light bulb turned on for 10 years, and now you're telling me it's blown out? Yeah, everything works until it doesn't.
100%.
So yeah, every building is secure until you have a break.
Yeah, fair point. It's more of a when rather than an if, I guess you can say.
If you don't do anything, if you're complacent and you never upgrade anything, yeah, things age out.
Yeah, they do. Unfortunately, quicker than you think sometimes. The old Moore's law comes into play, and you'll be left in the weeds.
That's true.
You mentioned some, DEF CON, Black Hat, some big events here, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners are very familiar with them. And you've been there, and you've performed in front of people. One, I think I'd get nervous. I'd get sweaty palms, mate, understanding how many people you presented in front of. But you've done some demonstrations in controlled environments. And when you can control your environment, it's a little bit easier and a little less of that human approach. You don't have to worry about as much. But what difference between what works on stage and as a demo works in real life and in the real world?
I get excited every time I'm going to present on stage. But if it doesn't work, what's the worst thing that happens to me? Nah, people are going to chuckle at me and, call me names. I don't care. But if I'm breaking into a building on site and, I had to sprint across a parking lot because I didn't want to look exposed, and now my heart rate's elevated, and yeah, your hands are shaky, you're worried about a guard, even though you've done the surveillance. The guard's not coming around for another half hour. Their routines. You're like, no, someone's coming, man. What was that noise? Everything sounds louder at night when you can't see who's around the corner. It's just a squirrel. You're like, that's footprints, that's footsteps. I know they're coming. Yeah, you as an attacker will perform differently, especially during a physical breach, if you think that your risk is elevated. You're going to get caught. Oh man. Which is great on every job because there's this inflection point that always happens. Every job you go into and you say, man, this place looks pretty tight. I don't know. I don't want to look foolish. And then you get a few wins, you slip a door, you pop a lock, you get into a thing. And then you've like, all right, I'm going to have stuff to put in the report. I feel professional. Then you just start getting bolder. You're like, well, I don't know. I'm not going to run across this room. I'm going to turn the lights on and see if any guards notice me, because you're hoping to get interdicted at some point. And the more that you don't get caught, you just get so brazen. And then as anybody who, goes up and talks to a nice looking person in a bar, like confidence gets you so far. The more confident you are, the more wins you keep getting. And I guess that kind of snowballs, because at this point, we've had so much success breaking into so many facilities that our confidence is up there. And you say, all right, if I walk up to the front, yes, of course, I'm here from this company. I have my fake credentials. I have my fake work order. You get really good at lying. And if you look calm and you look collected, the person looking at you says, well, this person must be here from, whatever technology company here to change the fluorescent light bulb fluid. That's what they told me. And their face looks believable.
That's so funny. Sometimes blending in, mate, it's a good thing. Are there things that you do now with that confidence? You go, it's the oldest trick in the book. What's up? Like things that people haven't updated yet that you're like, I know it's such a faux pas. It's like in the movies when you see them, it's classic, the keys under the doormat. I can't believe they haven't done this yet. But are there still moments where you have the oldest trick still prevails?
Yeah. We will take a building apart, bypassing the door locks, attacking the credential reader, like right at the electronic lock on the door, or attacking the back end system. Like we're still doing it.
The one that I often see too, as I'm doom scrolling, which is terrible, and now it's just full of AR slop, so I try to avoid it. But if you carry a ladder or you have a high-vis vest, you can get in anywhere.
Oh, certainly. The sort of the mundane contractor worker type personality gets us a lot of mileage. And I have loads of general service technician outfits that I can wear, which are sort of a hodgepodge of some logos that some that you don't, some electric supply company hat or whatever. And if you show up and you're sort of believable looking and you're sort of trustworthy and you look kind of distracted, like you don't even want to be there, a lot of people, especially the frontline, workers, they've met a bunch of people that look like you all week long. These are all things that even in our world today, if you imagine yourself at a front desk, somebody comes in looking like a general technician, unless you have a very specific script that your company has said you have to follow and you have to kick it up the chain, most buildings in this world, a lot of them will just kind of like, all right, yeah, I guess you belong here. If you disappear for hours, someone's like, whatever happened to that guy? Wasn't he checking the extinguishers? But for the most part, you kind of get in, you nose around for a bit, you come back out. We've done that for our recon. We've done our on-site recon just as a service technician. And then you know all the door readers and all the hardware and everything. And then when you're really going to break in on a different cover story, you're ready to go.
I want to put you on the spot. I don't know if you've got one off the top of your head, but it's like a wild story. Do you have a real life example of something where it just hits the fan, something that's absolutely insane, or even just like I wish someone saw that kind of moment?
Yeah, sure. Any of your listeners who are also fans of the Darknet Diaries will know this story, because my buddy Jack, he had me on the show, and I told the story on his program years ago. This was a huge data center job. It's full of a bunch of little stories involving people in trunks of cars and all kind of like digging under a fence. It's a massive facility, and we were there for over a week just doing all kind of really great work. But the story of me on a stolen bike, really, again, this was late in the job, and we had already had a lot of success with different things. You mentioned carrying a ladder. My colleague and I literally were wearing high vis. We had a small ladder. And at one point we were authorized to go destructive, and we were drilling a door. We'd like mid-afternoon, there's people kind of walking around, and well, those workers are working on something. We're drilling a lock out of a door. It's just, what are you doing? But the guards, everybody, oh, they're working on it. Those guys must be contractors doing something. So this job, we had all of these successes. We were in the data halls, we're taking selfies. And the company said, all right, you haven't gotten caught yet. You got to go really loud. So we started intentionally propping doors open, setting off alarms. And again, the guards got confused, and the workers got, why is there a door stop here? And they kind of kicked the door stop, and that alarm was loud. But no one's really stopping us, because we're acting annoying, but not annoying enough that someone's like, wait, do they actually belong here? So I had to get so crazy. We were setting off all these alarms, and eventually I just took a bike that was next to a building and just started biking around the parking lot and biking in between, like biking all over the campus, just acting weird. I was doing like jumps off curbs, like I was 13 again.
Nice.
And eventually we had stolen radios from the various guard shacks. So we had comms, and someone says, hey, Deviant, I think you're going to get some company. Somebody on cameras noticed it. There's cameras like tracking you, being like, what is bike guy doing who is this guy?
Bike guy.
And they're listening to so all these guards start trying to like, I'll drive over that way. But again, if you're on a bike, I can go places that cars can't. I would just zip through a line of cars, and then this truck starts backing up, trying to go the other way through the parking lot. And I would cut through buildings. At one point, I ditched the bike and I took a cart. They had golf carts for security and people. And I started driving this golf cart around like off the road and driving through dirt. I almost rolled it. So all these people, and the radio's lit up. They say, what is bike guy's on a cart now? What is he doing?
Bike guy.
And all the mobile guards were all trying to find me. And they were all like driving around the building. All the guards who were inside the building were coming out of the buildings like, bike guy's on the east side. Hang on, I'm going to get over there. But they couldn't really do anything. What are you going to like tackle somebody?
Yeah.
You're going to spear me with the truck? You can't do that. So they were all just doing their observe and report, crazy bike guy. Everyone inside the offices got in everywhere. They got into executive building. They were taking pictures inside of like the C-suites, because all the guards were distracted by one idiot out in the parking lot. And again, if anyone's heard the story, as the story goes, eventually someone who wasn't even at work that day in their security org, their phone was like lighting up with all of these, like, what is happening? And he drove into the office and he kicks the door. It's like, what the F is going on? We've got all this red door failed, door propped. And like, look at this guy on a bike. He's like, yeah, there's a guy on a bike outside. Put one truck on him, sit on him, get back to your posts. What is all of these door events? What's happening in the server rooms? So it ended up being a really good learning experience for that staff, because it was out in the middle of nowhere. It was the most exciting thing to happen on this campus probably in years.
I love that, though. That's gold. Well, with that so then companies can make sure they don't have instances where they get a bike guy, new merch line coming out soon. What steps can companies take to meaningfully improve their physical security so they don't get bike guy running around?
Again, coming back to these simulation scenarios, you can't pour all your budget into security and testing, because again, the business you're in is to make your business run. But that one job probably continues to pay dividends for that guard force and that whole employee org, because they're like, remember that time the crazy thing happened once. Yeah, stress inoculation. Just that's the way we teach anybody who's going to do any really high speed stuff. You do stress inoculation. You want to get your body accustomed to performance even under adverse conditions. So teaching people like, hey, we're going to have somebody sometime in the next quarter who's going to be on this campus that doesn't belong here. And if you're the one who catches them, well, you get a free steak dinner or something. You get a coupon for dinner at your favorite restaurant. It turns everyone's eyes a little sharper. Like, it might be someone you know. It might be someone you're holding the door for your buddy. What if they're trying to win themselves the steak dinner by not getting caught? Like, you do a little bit of testing, a little bit of adversarial simulation every so often, and it just keeps people sharp.
Yeah, keep them on their toes. It goes back to the just sometimes hiding in plain sight, make people think a little bit more critically about what they're doing and what's going on. Mate, I could talk to you for hours on end.
So it's been a treat. I could talk to you forever. Right on.
Get out of town. Let's go get a pint somewhere after this.
I'd love to.
Keep going. But to wrap it up, now, my medium of choice is YouTube. Like I said, I got to learn about some building codes that I never knew before from following you. Where can people go to find more about you, more about what you do, and plug your socials, like, is what I'm getting.
So I'm Deviant Ollam, spelled not at all like it sounds. It's written somewhere down there, I'm sure. But I am on lots of the places and spaces. I'm most known for either YouTube or just being that guy that you see at conferences. And you're like, yeah, it's that guy. You've been around forever. But I'm, I throw funny cat pictures on Instagram, or I occasionally answer questions on Reddit. I'm not good at most things on social media because, I don't know, I'm an old person, right? The internet is for the young or something. I'm impressed when anybody recognizes or listens to me at all.
Well, I appreciate your production value, mate. Like I said, it hits home. It makes me think of I'm talking to the real producer, the real person behind the screen today. So again, thank you very much, mate, for spending your time, even on the road. I know it's not always easy doing those things. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me on, man. This is great.
Okay, I very much enjoyed that. It's great that we were able to get Deviant on the show. We are out of time for Ask One Password today. But we'll make sure to answer all of your questions in the next episode. Before that, we have to follow tradition and play a cybersecurity game, which means it's my turn to cue the jingle.
It's identity theft. Guess who they're claiming to be? Fire your yes or no questions for security and catch that fake ID.
Enjoy the vocal breaks in that. It sounds like he's got a cold. Right. Welcome to Identity Theft, the newest random but memorable security game. But before we play, here's a quick recap of the rules. I am the host, and I am secretly pretending to be a well-known person, celebrity, or fictional character. Sarah and Jaden can ask me yes or no questions to narrow down who I am at any point. If they think that they know who I am, they can buzz in. To buzz in, they will have to either shout single factor or multi-factor. Remember, that's the thing that goes wrong every time. If they shout single factor, that means that they can guess who I am, get it right, and they will earn 1 point. If they shout multi-factor, they have to name who I am and give 2 correct facts about me. If they can pull that off, they'll earn 2 points. We know this is an oversimplification of multi-factor authentication, but it's our way of making this game security-themed. No judgment, please. So that covers the rules. It's time for you to both try and guess today whose identity I've stolen, and your clue is I've been to space.
Last time I played this, Sarah off the bat was like, I think I know who it is. I was like, we didn't even have to answer any questions.
Well, that's the thing. You know how sometimes we've played games and people are like, I hate this game? This is the one where I'm like, I don't like to guess. I don't like surprises. So right away, I want to be like multi-factor and like I have a guess right off the hop and I'm going to guess who I think it is, because otherwise I'm just going to ask the questions to say who I think it is.
I love that this could end the show. Like, just like right now, just
so I'm going to go
just
for
drop it.
I'm going to write down who I think you're going to say, just in case, so I can still claim I guess too.
Okay.
So I'm going to go with multi-factor right off the hop and not ask a single question, because otherwise my questions are all going to be leading towards who I think it is. And I'm going to guess that you're Katy Perry and you're currently dating the Canadian Prime Minister, ex-Prime Minister, and you're a recording artist and you've been to space, and you wrote a song for the Olympics a couple years ago. It was used.
Oh,
and
didn't know that.
That's about all the information I'm going to go with right now. Because I'm either
Well, there
right
we
or
go.
way wrong.
Instantly, Sarah's got it right. No
Get
need
out
to
of
play the game,
town.
everybody.
What is this? Every time I'm paired up with Sarah, she smashes it out of the park.
Do you know what? This would be so much worse if it was radio, because I would have had like a good, decent chunk, like seeing me out until the news. Like if you'd come on and you'd just been like, I know the answer and I don't want to play the game. It would have been mayhem. But podcast,
Are you
well,
serious that
sure,
that's
we
right?
could answer like 8 minutes early, sure.
Far out Brussels sprout. That is
There we go.
impressive,
Yeah,
Sarah.
Katy Perry
correct.
participated in the historic Blue Origin all-female space flight. Everybody remembers that. 65 miles above the Earth, the 11-minute star-studded flight aimed to empower women in space exploration, during which Katy Perry experienced weightlessness and sang "What a Wonderful World."
Just quick bone to pick, Anna. If we can have some more difficult answers so poor little Jaden can get in next time, that'd be
sorry.
great.
Did you? Who did you write down?
What we don't know is what did you write down?
Yeah, what did
Who,
you write
who
down?
did you write down?
Okay, on the who do you think? If you were to have a guess,
Well, I'd
without
say
Katy
Buzz
Perry.
Aldrin every time. I'd say Buzz Aldrin or the other guy.
I went with
Chris
the
Hadfield.
other,
Chris Hadfield?
the other guy, Chris Hadfield.
Fun fact: I met Chris Hadfield in the line in Toronto Airport, like ready to board my flight, and I turned around and I said, "Do you think we'll get any turbulence?" And he said, I don't know. It looks pretty clear out there. I was like, oh, right, yeah. I wouldn't want this to be the worst flight you've been on.
Oh my gosh, so smooth. Oh my gosh, what a
It did not happen that smooth in real life. I think he completely avoided me. In fact, I know he did because, like, when you go off to the separate bits in the plane, like he was ready to leave me in the dust there.
that's so funny.
And so with that, that is the end of the show. So thank you for tuning in today and for Deviant for making the time to join us on the show. If you want to ask us a question, remember you can always send us an email to podcast@onepassword.com, or you can head over to onepassword.community, or even you can comment on the Random But Memorable YouTube channel. And we don't ask very often, but if you do have a chance and you wanted to show your support for the show, if you could spend just a couple of minutes to leave us a review via your favorite podcast app, it would be very much appreciated. So thank you in advance. And that's it. So thank you both for another fun episode.
It was good fun.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Yay.
Love you both.
Thank you both.
And blended hot dogs. So if Anna cuts the previous bit out, then that won't make any sense, and so we have to leave it in. There we go.